Welcome to Insight with Moonshadow. I am Moonshadow, an integrative holistic therapist, intuitive shaman, interfaith minister, and evangelist with over 30 years of experience in the healing field in the US as well as internationally. So my intention here with Insight with Moonshadow is to help you connect to your inner self and you to the world around you. So now today's topic has been it's an interesting topic because it's something that I've experienced firsthand, and I am certain there within people's belief systems, you can or cannot, or will not, or whichever, depending on your perception, is in your wheelhouse of thinking and believing. So, of course, in the spirit of Insight with Moonshadow, we don't judge anyone for their particular view or their perception. We'll just either agree to disagree or that kind of thing. So this week's topic is about reincarnation and where has your soul journeyed? Where has it gone throughout the ages? Now, to start it off, yes, 420. To start it off, something that I was told scientifically as a very young moon in school, I was taught this scientific principle in law that energy cannot be created nor destroyed. So now, thank you for that, Dawn Marie. So now if energy cannot be created nor destroyed, then it doesn't come from nowhere, right? It has to come from somewhere and has to go somewhere. So that being said, who we are, we are basically machines, incredibly wonderful creations. You know, we have our different systems, circulatory system. We have all of our different systems. We have our muscles, our bones. Everything is made to put our immune system. All of us that were built to be able to work in a fine-tuned kind of way. Our hearts beat involuntarily. There are things that we put out there where we don't even realize. Just to flick your finger takes immeasurable amounts of energy as well as thought that happens in millionths of a second. But also too, no different than our cars, they have to run on fuel, they have to run on energy. We are built utilizing energy, our own bioelectrical system, if you want to look at it from a scientific perspective. But also too, our soul or our energy, our souls are also built in the same way. It's an energy that cannot be created nor destroyed. So now bringing it back to reincarnation, it's very unique because a lot of times with reincarnation, you get wiped. It gets completely wiped, very similarly to a computer that gets a new reinstalled version of Windows or a Mac that has a new operating system. It takes out a lot of the old and replaces it with new. So it's like a refurbished kind of situation. So looking at it from a scientific perspective, we are upcycled all the time. This is who we are. The personality might be different. Our gender might be different. The fact that we walk on 2 legs or 4 legs might be different as well. That may change. But with reincarnation, your soul travels to multiple different places and multiple different time zones and different things. You can meet and bump into different people. I have been fortunate. Yeah, okay, I'm going to use that word fortunate because sometimes it's been not always great, but I've been fortunate to be connected or reconnected with people or souls that I've known before. And that is quite an interesting experience to do that. to be brought into people that you've known before, and they may have been an ex-lover. They could have been an ex-wife, brother, sister, father. So it's very interesting. Now, me as an empath and someone that's spiritually oriented, I'm a little more in the know than necessarily than the average person. So this is why I bring this topic in to my show this week, because not always people realize you may have experienced a child, someone being very, very young, and something comes out that's so profound, and you're going, where did they get that? One answer is the fact that they remember other parts of their soul prior to. Now, Chrissy's saying here, I was told that if we didn't learn anything in our life, we would get reborn again to learn again. And yes, there is a level, there is a learning curve there, that you come back to learn a lesson, or to, no different than school, you have to learn to crawl, to walk, to move forward, and to evolve. So if you're doing that, you go through kindergarten, you learn your alphabet, you do that. And as you continue learning, you graduate high school and you continue learning. So the soul's journey is not much different. It's not much different than that. You continue learning. So this is why when someone says to you, you must be an old soul, that's because a lot of residual memory, there's a lot of residual memory and wisdom that is still there, that fully didn't defrag, or fully didn't, in the reboot, it didn't completely wipe off. Now, there's advantages and disadvantages to that. Advantages is you still have some of those old lessons floating around, and then you're able to utilize those lessons so you don't have to relearn them. Downside, if you remember them and they weren't necessarily the greatest lessons, but you remember them, they can mess with your present. And that's not always fun. And I have actually that has actually happened to me multiple times in my life. Places I've been, people I've been, a lot of different incarnations of who I've been. And ultimately they come to full circle, where you've incarnated so many times where you no longer incarnate. You are now completely disembodied. But here's a little story. I remember one of my exes, which actually was our second time having a relationship. Oh, thank you very much for that YouTube link. I'll definitely have to check that out. And there's a perfect example of that. And this, intuitively, this comes right into what I'm saying and sharing at the moment. Now, one of my exes, which I did have a past life with, what ended up happening was her nephew. We were all talking precisely about reincarnation, that kind of thing. And what ended up happening was, I had asked, and I think it was either me or my girlfriend at the time that asked him, but I believe it was me that asked him. We asked him, what were you when you were grown up? Like, who were you when you were grown up before? Now, that could be a very, very tricky question. We didn't know what to expect. This is the answer that was given. The answer that was given was, I was very tall. I had wings. And I remember wearing blue. And this child went further with quite a few descriptions that when you know someone is making something up as you go along, you usually can tell. But he was spouting out these details like right there, boom, 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 one after the other. So that brought me to realize there's definitely more to it than meets the eye. Our souls do travel and do get upcycled and do change as we go. So now if someone is a younger soul, they come in and basically they're still learning. They may have only had like a couple, 2, 3, 4 lifetimes prior to. So they're still learning the ropes. They could still be a little more naive about things. But as you incarnate more, and if you remember them more, and there are methods to go back and to know whether you've been reincarnated or not. There's things that you can do. You can get a past life regression. I've done that with people quite often. I've done that with clients where I've brought them back to other lifetimes because the lessons, they needed to relearn them, or they needed to remember those lessons in this present time because they're reliving them over and over and over again, and it's stopping them up from going further. Now, deja vu, I'm glad you bring that up. And also Cindy brought it up earlier. With deja vu, a lot of that usually is that you've relived it. This is the second time. So there are people that I've met, and there are even people in this room that I've envisioned prior to meeting them. It just didn't make sense prior at the time. You know, prior to, it's like, well, who is that? I don't know who that is. You can dream about them. You could have a vision about them, or a little flash memory. A little flash memory can happen. And then you're like, whoa, wait a minute. You may remember it, you may not. But you'll definitely remember it later when you see them again. And many times I have found that people are familiar. There are times that even during this show that I've done this show, I'm like, I saw myself in front of a camera. I saw myself with this background here. And it didn't make sense because it was just a dream. But fast forward years later, and here I am in front of all you, saying what I'm saying that I may have seen before or heard before. I know it sounds like a really crazy Matrix thing, but it's real and it does exist. Now, whether you're experienced with it, or whether you've been raised to know it, or whether you haven't been raised to know it, that's also a big thing too. Because spirituality isn't just for everybody. Even though it's prominent, not everyone realizes it. Not everyone accepts it. Not everyone has experienced it up front and center in their lives. There are people that are very logical and more scientific, which is fair. I'm also, just to say, to admit, I also started out being a skeptic myself early on. So if anyone told me, fast forward many, many, many years later, that I would do things intuitively, instinctively, and do things shamanically, as opposed to doing things scientifically and black and white and all that, I probably wouldn't have believed them. But fast forward, here we are. And there's an origin and there's a rhyme to reason to everything. So that's when I throw a little bit of logic into this. Now, how many times, and just you can throw up into the audience here, into the chat, how many people have experienced deja vu or experienced meeting someone and they seem really familiar? Okay, so Dawn Marie has felt that. Okay, Beth as well. Okay, and Michael more than once. See, and Cindy many times. And there are people that I've met that I knew them before. And sometimes that can make things complicated. And I will say that it makes things complicated. For example, my best friend, I've known her for, in this lifetime, many years, but also too, I've known her in prior lifetimes. So you want to complicate matters. Okay, let's just put this, let's just pull this apart for a second. Let's pull a couple of layers of onion here off of it. Not only do I know this person in this lifetime, I've known them in at least three other lifetimes. And one of those lifetimes, they were my offspring. Talk about complicated. Another one, they were my lover. And another one, they were either a sibling or a best friend back then. Now, how do I know this stuff? Part of it's through journeying. And Dawn Marie is saying, I really think that I've known you before, which is why I feel so comfortable helping you. And I agree. I agree. There are people right in this room that they're very familiar. They've been very familiar to me in one way, shape, or form. And that's an added adventure to figure out, how did I know them? To what degree? Now, in a past show talking about hypnosis and the power of hypnosis, I had mentioned about how you can go back in time and you can even go forward in time as well. And there's some facts to that. And if I wasn't there when I actually did that experiment, I wouldn't have believed it. If I didn't actually factually realize and actually live that through someone I worked with, I wouldn't have believed that you can go forward in time and actually predict certain things by talking to their higher self. So it could be, to be clear, it could be really confusing, incredibly confusing. It's tough enough to live with your identity and your life right now, right here. But then to go and find out that you are a woman in past life, if you were a man, or you're a man and you're a woman presently in this lifetime. One of my past lives, I had 3 children. I was also a healer. And I also was murdered in that lifetime for being an intelligent woman. So now looking back at that, it could be a little disconcerting. And again, it all depends on your belief system. A lot of people, they will go to an intuitive or go to a psychic, and then the psychic says, oh, you were a king, or you were a queen, or you were this, or you were that. Not everyone was the queen of King of England or whatever. Not everyone was famous. It's really not about that. It's about where your soul has traveled throughout the ages. There are certain things that you might be interested in, and you can't really figure out why. One of my friends is terribly afraid of water, has never drowned, has never had a trauma regarding water, but dark water. Now, in looking at it and investigating it more, it was a past life. It was a past life incarnation that they had died in or around water, and it was dark out. And this is the soul remembering, that residual memory that comes to the surface, and you can't really put your finger on it unless you investigate it more. Now, the Buddhists believe that we could be reborn not only as human, but as other, as animals as well. Now, do you remember everything? Maybe, maybe not. I was told by many people and people I've worked with that they were convinced, like one friend of mine was convinced that their cat came back, and they were reminded them so much of a person, a loved one that passed away. Now, yes, you can think of it from the perspective of they're trying to grieve, or they're trying to look at it. So I'm looking at it from a skeptical aspect at the moment. Let's go there for a minute. You go back and you go, well, I really loved my uncle or aunt, so-and-so, or my grandmother or grandfather, my father, mother, brother, sister, whoever. But then again, there are certain things that just are inexplicable. You cannot wrap your head around all these things. It makes too much sense. So were they fishing? Were they looking? Were they grieving? Some people may think so. But there are certain things that you can't dismiss. There's also the level of just influencing. Influencing animals and children are very, very good at seeing, apparitions and seeing things because they don't have the same judgment as we do as adults. So that also makes a big, huge difference as well. So we are meant, as energy cannot be created nor destroyed, we are meant to come back, to learn more, to evolve more, to be more. That makes a big, huge difference. And anyone that's coming into the broadcast, thank you very much for coming in. I want to thank you personally for coming in and supporting and subscribing to the show and coming in. So thank you so much for being here. So now, looking at that from that perspective, skeptical or no, it's something where you can't deny certain things. It's kind of like, approving or disapproving the existence of God. That's a tough cookie to kind of look at, right? Or kind to explain air, something you can't see, feel, hear, or touch. There's a lot wrapping around it. So a lot of times it takes a lot more thought. It takes a lot more investigation to really look at the whole idea. They also, studies have proven, not with 100% accuracy at this moment, but they believe, and they have tested, that the soul, I believe it was 21 grams. I think it was 21 grams that they've measured people prior to passing and then immediately passing, that they are 21 grams lighter. And there are schools of thought thinking and believing that the soul actually has weight. There's an actual weight to the soul. Now, I'm going to say I tend to believe that could be very, very true. I'm not going to say it's undeniable as of yet. However, being a natural skeptic and someone that wants to know and wants to get to the bottom of things and wants evidence with things, that I'm a pretty firm believer that it is very, very possible that the soul has a weight. It's tangible. Because everything that we know and hear is not like, when you hear someone speaking, there are things that I have not experienced in this lifetime, but there's wisdom that I remember. Like I've never been in war, but I have memories of being in wars, of carrying a sword. And I've even had karmic wounds that I actually had to get physical healing in this body, in this lifetime, because they were karmic wounds from way back when. Now again, some may believe, some may not, and that's okay. Neither is wrong, because it's your part of your evolution and your enlightenment to learn, not learn, consider, not consider, anything like that. So it's your personal experience on where you're going to go and where you're going to come from this, and what are you supposed to learn? What are you supposed to experience? So there are people in your life that you've connected with. You've been before. You have done things before. For example, like I myself, personally, I've always been one for jewelry, right? This is not, no one in my family wears a ton of jewelry, but I've always been part of that. I've always worn like necklaces, that kind of thing. I've got piercings and all that. Now, right. And that comes from a nomadic side. That comes from a gypsy side. And also that comes from way back when I was in Egypt. And I was in Egypt twice. Now, Christy's saying here, I've had a healer take care of my back because I had a sword run through me from the top of my shoulder trying to my shoulder blade on the back. And I can say from personal experience, I had a sword wound in my leg, and I'd gone to another intuitive. I was working a big, huge show, and there was a ton of healers and intuitives. And when we were trading sessions, this one intuitive said, "You tend to sometimes nurse your left side, and sometimes you walk with a limp." And I was like, "How would you know that?" Because I wasn't doing it at the time. And then she brought in the past life where I was in a fight and I took a sword to my leg, and it was a pretty bad puncture. So knowing that now, it was a karmic wound of something that I had to take care of. I had energy work done, and I did it within myself as well as go to other people and got it taken care of, and had the karmic energy released from that wound. Because obviously I'm not, my body isn't the same body I had way back then. But the soul remembered. So it was an energetic wound. So I had it taken away. And you can release that, Chrissy, by the way. You can release that karmic wound. And it's something where we'll have to talk afterwards sometime in private. We can see if we can release that wound. Because if it's a really bad one, it's something that we can probably release and get rid of. And this is what I do. This is my life purpose, is to help heal. So within that is it's very hard to disprove that information when I literally had felt it. And when I went back and I journeyed back to that time, I saw the fight and I felt it. Also, in a prior topic to another show, we spoke about totem animals and life protectors and guardian angels and such. A lot of those could potentially be people that you've known in another lifetime. One of my guides is an old buddy of mine back in Scotland when we were Highlanders. Yeah, it's a real thing. So, hey, that must be Eric, I believe. Nice to see you, Eric. Yes, I see you changed your name. I had to look it up because I was like, but good to see you. So now, these are things that you can't just dismiss. You can't just dismiss the fact of, have I been alive around before? In the years that I have chronologically right now, there are things that I remember that I didn't experience in this lifetime. As a matter of fact, there are multiple times that I've sat next to someone, and this is just proof. This is just bringing proof from someone that is skeptical, someone that wants evidence, wants proof. There are times that I've been sitting with someone, having a coffee with someone that was far older than me. And if you were blind, if you weren't aware, if you couldn't see who was talking, you would swear they were two peers talking of the same chronological age, right? And to remember things from way back then, even though chronologically this lifetime you weren't there, it's some crazy stuff. This is very difficult for your head to wrap around. And this is why I bring this topic up. It's not only just controversial, but it's something where, who talks about that? I've literally met, more than a few times, I've met people from before. 3 of those people were ex-lovers or ex-significant others. Now, how do you wrap your head around meeting someone for the first time and saying, I know you, I remember you? And for the sake of not being too explicit, going kind of slightly around it but not getting in, But the first time actually being with them intimately and it not being awkward, feeling like you've done it a million times before. Wow. That's crazy, right? So yes, and Eric is saying I tend not to find the same conclusions. And that's cool. That's cool. It all depends on your evolvement. Not involvement, evolvement, where you are in your lifetime presently. Much of the lessons could very much be locked inside that you learn little by little. Now, Chrissy's saying they woke me up from a sleep that they put me to sleep, and I went back to my former life. I was crying because I was burning, and I was yelling, only tried to help, and she was a witch. So yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I am very cool with that. It, our evolvement, we all process things differently. So what I'm supposed to experience in this lifetime may not be what you're supposed to experience, Eric, or Chrissy, or Ariel, or Cindy. It's personal. It's a personal thing. So who am I to say, well, if you don't want to acknowledge that you've had multiple lifetimes, well, then you're wrong. No, it's your experience and it's your processing. This is why you can't really judge people for what they feel and believe. It depends on how they were nurtured, what their conditioning was. So there are multiple people that I've had to work with, and we have to go back into past lives to realize why they're going through the same situation over again, over and over and over again. Like relationships. The person's different. It's a different name, different address, different year, but the same situation over and over and over again. I'll tell you why that happens. Again, from my expertise, from my experience. It's because you didn't learn it from the first time. So you didn't learn it the first time, so you get the opportunity or curse or gift, whichever you want to call it. You get that again, and you get poked with it again, and you relive it again, and again, and again, and again, until you figure it out, until you sort it out. And when you do finally sort it out, then you're like, there you go. What did I do? Why did I do that? It's like sticking your hand in the fire and not learning that it's burning you. Why do it again? And in countless times in working with people with the therapy that I do, so many times people didn't get it the first 5 times. They needed to be brought to that spot, that level of when it happened, when the inception happened, that point of, oh, wait a minute, that fork in the road, those crossroads that they made that decision yet again and decided to still go left instead of take that right or go forward. So all of that can make a huge difference. So in learning where you've been, you know where you're going. This is one of the big reasons why I brought this topic today. And gladly, anytime, if anyone has a question, you can reach out to me, reach out to me to my website or on my social media and have a session, book a session with me. You're going to learn something about yourself. You're going to go from that. You're going to experience some form of change, whether it be a little change or a monumental change. It's all up to you, and if you want to open yourself up to it. And Chrissy's saying, if nothing goes right, try going left. That's right. I completely concur with that, with that thought pattern. So if the same thing keeps happening over and over again, sometimes we have to take a real good look at why is it happening. Is this something from a past incarnation? Is this a past lesson I haven't figured out or I haven't gotten? Is it? And in doing that, then we can really utilize the true healing factor of where we were, where we are, and where we're meant to be. Do we have to keep burning our hand? And I've learned that personally. When I was young, I did that. I put my hand on a hot iron. And I was told, you're going to get burned. Don't do that. And you know what? Blink of an eye. What does Moon do? Yep, I went ahead and touched the iron. So anything that I come to bring to your attention, anything that I share with you, it's because I have done it too. I'm practicing what I preach. I haven't always learned the first time. But now, things are a bit different. I'd rather learn from other people's mistakes than learn from my own. Because it's more painful when you have to learn it from yourself or to yourself or by yourself. It's so much easier to see someone else's hard lesson, not necessarily mistake, but hard lesson, and then employ that into your life, right? And also, Dawn Marie is saying, I'd rather learn from other people's successes as well. And exactly, if you look at anybody that's an influencer, a motivational speaker, a successful business person, someone that's successful in any aspect of life, doesn't it make sense to view how they live their lives and try to learn their lessons along and apply them to your life? You could do the same thing with reincarnation. You can do the same thing with past lives. You can do the same thing with prior relationships. Now let's just move from reincarnation for 1 second and go to past relationships. Let's view reincarnation, quote unquote reincarnation, as if it was like past relationships. If you're literally going from one relationship to the next and it's exact same relationship, the same dynamics, the same exact dynamics from one to the next to the next to the next, and you are blaming that person, you really need to take a look in the mirror as well. You need to own and be accountable. So looking at it from that perspective, if you look at the common denominators from one to the next to the next, it's no different than reincarnation in past lives. You realize where you came from. Like who I am today is a culmination of who I've been in past lives. I've been a healer multiple times. I've been a mercenary. I've been a protector. And coming into now, 2016, it's no wonder that I was involved with martial arts and being able to protect people, where all the dynamics that makes me me is a culmination of my past lives to now. So I can honestly say in this time, 2016, that everything is happening in full circle. All my past lives are coming to full circle. Now that's something to really wrap your head around, huh? Things to remember now. Everything is coming full circle. All the lessons, everything, relationships, everything is coming back around to say, now what are you going to do with it? Thanks for the hammy. Now what are you going to do with it? What are you doing with all this knowledge? Are you going to learn from it, or are you going to put it aside? That's something to think about. So now let's think about this for a second. So if energy cannot be created nor destroyed, then that means we had to have lived it before. Our energy had to have been before. Where you live now, going back millions of years prior, it may not be the exact same air, but in that location, other things were happening. I remember investigating a particular pharmacy, and I had mentioned this experience in the story prior to in other shows, but I investigated a pharmacy, and intuitively I picked up horses. I could smell the horses. I could hear them shuffling around in their stalls and everything. Now, for the skeptical, you were just making it up. Okay. I'll take that you were just making it up, and I'm going to give evidence that when I looked back in the history of that area, there were horses there. So I got proof. Actual, factual proof that there were horses there. So intuitively, I picked up all that old karmic knowledge of where that place was, where it was stables, exactly where I stood. It wasn't a pharmacy. It wasn't a place where you can get shampoo and soap and, sanitary products, deodorant, whatever it may be. That place used to be a stable with 20 horses in it. There's also a spot in that location where I didn't want to go in. So there was some dark stuff that happened in that area that I did not feel comfortable going in. So there must have been someone that had gotten murdered or something. I did not research that aspect of it at the time. I probably should. Go back and check. But there was evidence backing it up. Now, was I there in a past life? I didn't go that far to research that much, but I did research the actual what was going on in that location at that time. 60, 70, 80, 100 years ago. I forget exactly how many years, but it's a long, many, 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 many years prior to. The whole area was that. So this is the whole thing. There's actual fact on us being energy and us passing on and moving forward. Now, do you believe or do you not believe? Either way, you're correct, because it's within your perception of what you choose. And I'm not going to judge you either way. So now, bringing the question to you, I know Chrissy had shared that she's remembered past lives. Have anyone else remembered past lives or had dreams that they were somewhere else? See, Dawn Maria is saying, I don't believe, I know. No, actually, I can say I know as well. It was way too real for me to think that it was made up. And granted, I'm pretty creative, but there's some stuff that had come up that there's no way, even in my craziest thoughts, that I would have made that stuff up. Now, Dawn Maria is sharing here, one of my sons talked about his past life as a toddler all the time. We'll see. There you go. And also, too, when we're younger, we're less predisposed to judgment. We're less predisposed to opinion. So this is why when we come into a new lifetime, we come in more pure. Part of it because we're whitewashed. You know what I mean? It's we're wiped from the memory a lot of the time. Not all, but most. But a lot of times that residual stuff comes through. So it's very difficult to dismiss it. Now, Dawn Maria is saying, one of my sons talked about his past life as a toddler all the time. Our friend asked why we were teaching him how to speak Greek. We weren't, but he was speaking it. There you go. We thought it was just him learning to talk. Okay. Now, Chrissy is sharing, I went to Crete and I've never been there before, but I could easily find my way around. I also told my husband about the next street before we got there. And that's like major. I can also tell you this is another little addition to the evidence. Now, I've had the opportunity and the blessing of traveling internationally, and there are places I've been to that looked incredibly familiar. I've been to South Africa and I've been to the UK. I've been to South Africa and different provinces. I've been to 7 of the 9 provinces there, as well as being in Ireland, Scotland, and England. Now, the craziest part of that is things felt so familiar. I actually knew things and actually felt things as if I was there. Now, fast forward. Now, actually, let's go back. Sorry, guys. Let's go back. Now, I've traveled, say, South Africa, so I was there. The culture, the people, the energy felt so familiar. The people I spoke to, even learning the language, it came to me very, very quickly, where I understood the language. I couldn't speak the language, but I could kind of read and decipher it a bit. Interesting. Now, going fast forward and then going back, I was looking after the fact of this experience. I was looking through my library and looking through my books. I had an immeasurable amount of books regarding Africa and everything about Africa. Now, part of my belief system and my walk in life is walking the sacred way. And part of that's being pantheist, and a lot of it is Buddhist oriented as well. So now, looking through my library again, ton of books on Buddhism and Zen. So I was already there. I already knew a lot of this information. And then come to find out, 20, 30 years later, no wonder you're who you are, is because you were there before. Exactly. Now, Dawn Marie is saying, when I was in one of the castles, I felt so at home that tears came to my eyes. And that is also another bit of processing. When you get an emotional response, or when you feel something so deeply, 9 out of 10, you had a past life in that time frame. So I definitely suggest and advise, if you are interested, if this is something that's tempting you or teasing you to find out more, you should. I've done countless past life regressions, and the takeaway from that is immense. It's amazing the lessons that you could learn from where you've been, from reflecting on where you've been. Now, in normal traditional therapy, you learn a lot from where you've been to where you are now, right? So wouldn't that go to show that learning about past lives and things that you've experienced in your past lives, wouldn't that also be the same in how you can apply that knowledge to now? So believe or not believe, I respect that. But I have a really difficult time believing I've only been here this amount of time, in this space, for this long, and I've learned nothing else but from when I came out of the womb to now. It's hard to wrap my mind around that. It's that simple. It's very difficult to think that I've only had this lifetime. This is why I can also say, as Dawn Marie said, I don't believe, I know. I can say I know as well. There are things that have come out of my mouth, things that I've taught other people that I did not learn in this lifetime. I didn't. A lot of what I do now formally, I've done before in other lifetimes. I just had to get the formal education again, even though I already knew, and to apply it. I'm reapplying old wisdom, old knowledge. That is some wild stuff. So that's some wild stuff, isn't it? So if you feel like something's familiar, or if you feel that someone's familiar, You might want to do a rethink on if you've known that person before, you know? And thank you, Dawn. She's saying, that's some good juju. So let's summarize this. And part of it's going to be questions, because I enjoy challenging people and provoking thought. Is everything you know just based on where you've lived now? Is all your wisdom and experience, your identity, everything, right here, right now, has it only been within this chronological time, in this body? Have you felt if your soul has traveled or not? Now, despite what your belief system is, and I'm not challenging anybody on that, whether to adhere or believe what I'm saying is gospel. You don't have to. All I ask is you consider, let it bounce around in your brain a little bit. Because this knowledge, these little nuggets of wisdom, may propel you exponentially into your next experience. It may be the one trigger that triggers you into the next big lesson for you. So think about this. Think about this next time you find a place that's really familiar, or you meet someone and you feel like you've known them before, or dreamt about it before, or feel passionate about a place that you've never been. Consider this, if you will, the potential and the possibility that you were there. You could have been there as a child. You could have been there as a woman. You could have been there as a man. Now, also, to add another twist to this, in summary, I've had lifetimes that I also wasn't human. So that's a whole different topic. And I know a couple of people in this broadcast right now that know exactly what I'm talking about and have felt it and know it. So you don't necessarily have to be human in reincarnation. So think about that for a second. But as Michael is saying, it's a combination of both past and current experiences. And absolutely. Chrissy's also sharing, I must have been Tim the Two-Man Taylor because I have so many power tools that I can make grown men jealous. And I believe it because I'll tell you, Chrissy's got skills. She's got some skills. So I can honestly say I wouldn't be surprised if, Chrissy, you were a man, you were a builder of sort, or an engineer. And this is part intuition. This is part of what you're telling me. I wouldn't be surprised if you were a builder of sorts, or someone that had to have their own homestead, made something out of nothing, and had to work with their hands. I do get that intuitively, and you can take that knowledge with you. So in thinking about this, next time you find something familiar, next time you find someone familiar, next time you have a dream where it's like, wow, that felt so real, like I know I've been there, research it, take a look, get a past life regression. You can even do that through meditation too, or guided visualization as well. But look at it, investigate it, take a look and say, was I there? Read up about that particular thing. Befriend that person that seems familiar. And if you trust them enough, if they trust you enough, then maybe broach the idea of, maybe, you look so familiar and feel so familiar. Where could we have known each other before? Talk about an icebreaker. Huge icebreaker. If you have children, ask them what they were before. This is a mind blower, people. I'm telling you, you will be. This is not just something where it's just, this is a start of something big. This is why I brought this topic up today. This is opening up a whole different worldview. If you want, for the sake of sounding like Morpheus in the Matrix, I'm just showing you the door. It's up to you to walk through it. So, thinking on that, it's up to you whether you want to believe. If you've been or you've never been. But even if you don't believe you were, entertain it for a second. Have fun with that thought. Who could I have been? Where could I have gone? What could I have accomplished? What could I have built? Did I have children? Did I not have children? Was I a leader? Was I a follower? Was I a politician? Who knows? But the thing is, if you think about this and if you let your mind go a little bit and you actually do some research on it, you too may find that you're an older soul. You may find that you're older than you think. You may find that there's more wisdom there than meets the eye. And I'm going to leave you with that. I'm going to leave you with that knowledge. Because ultimately, it doesn't matter what I say. It matters what you want to believe and what you want to think. So if you're willing to walk through that door that I'm showing in front of you, you're in for an adventure. A big one. So, on that note, we're to close up the show. But I hope all of you had a great time here. I always appreciate and have you guys being here. I don't want you to feel old, Chrissy. That's terrible. But I'm going to close it up. And also, too, there are a couple of places I will have to designate where the after show is going to be. But there are a couple of places that we can go. And we'll do that after the broadcast is closed up. So I want to thank you all for spending time with me here on Insight with Moonshadow. It's really all of you that inspire this conversation and me sharing my wisdom with you. All of you inspire me to do this work. For over 30 years, I've been helping other people. So it's other people's knowledge and other people's experiences that just add proof to this purpose that I have. So I want to thank you all for being here and coming here every week and subscribing. And of course, if you find any kind of connection with me, feel free to follow me on all my social media, as well as here in Fire Talk as well. And you can check my YouTube channel and look at my website, which is moonphoenixrising.com. And you can find all aspects to me and how to connect with me. So as I say every week, be amazing, be strong, be amazing, and be you. See you soon. Thank you for being here.